everyone. This is Dr. Vahid Aryadoost here. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to compute the Flesch-Kincaid readability index and how to use it for your assignments or for your papers. So let's get started with the definition of the Flesch-Kincaid readability. This is an index that measures the level of difficulty in reading and comprehension of a given text. This is one of the very famous ones. There are a few others that are used for the same purpose, but I think this is quite useful, and that's why I'm going to use it in this presentation. Remember that the grade level score that is calculated based on the Flesch-Kincaid readability index is based on the US education system, as you can see right here, and ranges from 0 to 12 plus. I will explain this in a minute, but let's take a look at the formula for calculating this index. The formula is right here in red in the middle of the page. It's calculated as 0.39 times ASL, with ASL standing for the average sentence length, which is calculated by the number of words divided by the number of sentences. In addition, you have to sum this up with 11.8 times ASW, which stands for the average number of syllable per word. This is basically calculated by the number of syllables divided by the number of words in your text. Now, you don't really have to do this manually because there are many calculators online, and even your own Microsoft Word documents can automatically calculate the Flesch-Kincaid index for you. Now, I was saying that this grade level score is based on the U.S. education system and ranges from 0 to 12 plus. Let's see what it means, and let's take an example. For example, if a text with a Flesch-Kincaid index is found, if a text has a Flesch-Kincaid index of 8, it would be comprehensible to an average 8th grader. This also indicates that it could be slightly difficult for those 8th graders who are below the average, and it would be slightly easy for those 8th graders who are above the average. And that's something that you should take into account. This index is very useful. It's used in education, in writing, and especially in publications. In publishing, for example, graded readers, because the publishers want to ensure that the texts are appropriate for their intended audience. So they use something like Flesch-Kincaid or similar statistics, especially the Flesch-Kincaid index. How do we calculate the Flesch-Kincaid index? There are many calculators out there, as I mentioned before. I have chosen this calculator here for you. I need to make a disclaimer first. I'm not endorsing this calculator. I haven't received any commissions from them. I don't even know who has developed this. But I find it useful, and especially I find the graphic or the visualized representation of some of the results useful and practical. So I'm going to use this in this demonstration. I've already opened this website. I will leave this address in the comment section below this video. Please look up for it. This is the website and the readability formulas, and if you like, you can read these explanations, but basically you need to copy and paste your text into this interface. After you've done that, just click this box here. Is asking you if you are a human or an alien or robot, or basically we have to check it if you want to run the analysis. Let me show you how we can run the analysis. What I would like to use as samples here is from the IELTS.org website. Again, I will leave the address in the comment section below this video, so you can also play around with the different texts that are available here. There are several tabs here which you can toggle through. I'd like to go to academic reading and choose one of these texts. If you like, you can compare academic reading with general training reading, which I think would be quite a fascinating comparison to make. I've already opened two texts. One of the texts is called Robots at Work. This is a general academic reading text. And another one is called The Life and Work of Marie Curie, which is an academic text. It has been extracted from Encyclopedia Britannica in 2007. I would also like to make a comparison between those two texts and an article that I recently wrote for language testing. It was an invited paper which was published, as you can see from this website. It was published in the 40th anniversary volume of the journal. So I want to make a comparison. Basically, the reason why I want to make a comparison between the IELTS reading tests, or texts to be more specific, and this text is to figure out whether there is a correlation or whether there is any correspondence in terms of text difficulty between natural texts represented by my own paper and test texts, if you will, represented by the IELTS tests. So let me copy this. Of course, I have already done this before. I just want to show you how you can do it. Just to give you an example, then you can actually run the analysis on your own data sets in Corpora. Alright, so I copied it and I'm going to paste it into this interface. I already did. If you like, you can remove these letters. In the interest of time, I'm just going to leave it and click Check Text Readability. And there we go. The results are out almost immediately. What matters is that this readability calculator uses 7 popular readability formula to calculate the average grade level. It also calculates the reading age and also as well as the text difficulty of the same text. For example, the Flesch reading ease score is 56.9. The gunning fog is so on and so forth. If you like, you can just read about it. There are other pages on the same website where you can find a lot of useful information about these statistics. What we want to use, however, is the Flesch-Kincaid grade level, which is 11. So it's suitable for an 11th grader. If you scroll further down, you can see a summary of all of these statistics. So reading consensus that has been arrived at based on these statistics that you saw before is that it actually falls within the ability of an average 11th grader. So it's fairly difficult to read on average, and the right age of readers to read this text will be between 15 to 17 years old, which corresponds with the 10th to 11th graders, as I mentioned before. So this is just a part of the output that you can get from this engine. There are 2 other very useful outputs which you can look at here by clicking at Show Word Statistics. I can tell you which one would be useful, especially in your assignments. For example, the number of words per text is useful. The number of unique words and the number of repeat words. These are also useful statistics, as well as the number of 3-syllable words in the text, because it indicates how difficult the text might be. In this case, 11% of the texts are within, they have between 3 and even more syllables. Now you can also click on Show Graph Statistics to get a visual representation of the output of the analysis. There are 3 graphs here, as you can see. I quickly walk you through these 3 graphs. If you like, you can present the graphs, but if you think that they take too much space, for example in your assignments or in your papers, you can just provide statistics that I showed you before. But it's also always useful to say a few words, say a few things about these graphs in your assignments or in your papers. The first thing that we want to present is the average number of words per sentences. As you can see, this column, which is pink in color, represents US average grade level, which is between 13 to 16 words per sentence. Compare that with the text that I just analyzed, which is way beyond the average level, of U.S. readers, which is, U.S. readers in pre-tertiary, of course, pre-tertiary school, which consists of 23 to 26 words per sentence, which is pretty lengthy, I think, for text. So this might kind of increase the cognitive load of the readers in one way or another. In addition to that, students' age that has been estimated to be suitable for this text to read is between 16 and 17 years old, and compare that with the US average grade level, which is 12 to 13. So if you want to use this for example, 11th to 12th graders in a US system, it's fine. But it's not suitable for graduate students or college students, as you can see, from the rest of the graph here, from this side. And finally, the percentage of three-syllable words in your text, and that's my text actually, is actually below the US average grade level. So this makes the text rather easy on average, because there are just fewer three-syllable words than a kind of text that's suitable for an average grade level in the US, which includes between 12 to 14. So this is the analysis of one of the texts. I want to also walk you through the analysis of the rest of the text that I've already done. Already presented this. This is the general reading passage that I just presented. Let's go through the IELTS academic reading test. Very interestingly, the text that I showed you before about Marie Curie's life and work has a grade level of 10, which is basically easier than the grade level of the general reading test compared with 11. So that's one of the interesting findings. I would expect that it should be the other way around. I would expect that the academic reading tests or texts would be more difficult to read, but it turns out that it's easier somehow. It's the level of difficulty for both texts has been qualitatively estimated as fairly difficult to read and fairly difficult to read. And the reader's age for this text would be between 14 and 15 years old, which corresponds to the 9th to 10th graders in pre-tertiary schools in the United States, whereas the other one, the general academic reading test, is suitable for 10th to 11th graders. So it's by 1 or 2 years above the suitability level of, or the difficulty level, in other words, of the academic reading test. Now let's compare these two with my own texts in terms of their readability, and then you immediately find out that the grade level of my own paper is 15, which is way beyond 10 and 11. And also, qualitatively, you would say that it's very difficult to read. And to be frank, I don't know to be proud of it or to be embarrassed by this evaluation. But the point is, well, it has been evaluated as very difficult to read. But importantly, it's suitable for college graduates, and this is the age of around 20 to 21, or even beyond that. I had written it for actually people who are even older than this. And interestingly, with regards to the average number of words per sentences, is suitable for this group of people and those who fall within grades 13 and 14, which basically represents college students and beyond. So I'm actually kind of happy and delighted by the results of this analysis, because the text is obviously suitable for tertiary level and graduate level students, whereas the texts that are used in the IELTS tests are probably not suitable, if we go by this analysis, are not suitable for people who are in graduate programs. Now, of course, this is one of the many indices that you can use to evaluate the suitability of your text in assessments. Now that we have learned how Flesch-Kincaid can be estimated, the question is, how can we use it for our language testing, assignments, or if we are writing a paper, how can we use Flesch-Kincaid? Well, Flesch-Kincaid index can be used to determine reading levels of text passages, and I'm using the word text in a very broad sense of the word. For example, if you are looking into looking into a reading test and want to investigate whether uh, there is evidence for validity, here is how you can use Flesch-Kincaid in your project. You can compare the difficulty level of tests with natural reading texts, as I just did before. You can also, if you're doing a listening test, you can compare the difficulty level of tests, specifically the transcripts of your listening tests. So this refers to transcripts with natural listening texts. If you are investigating, for example, validity of speaking tests or anything like linguistic features of speaking tests, the things would be a bit different. Here, something that comes to my mind is you can compare the level of spoken text produced by test takers of different ability levels. For example, you have level, I don't know, 3 out of 5, and you have level 5 out of 5. So you can create a corpus for level 3 test takers and a corpus for level 5 test takers, and then you compare the readability or the difficulty level of these two corpora with each other. I'll get back to this in the next slide, and I'll unpack it further for you. And in the same way, if you're investigating writing assessments, you can compare the level of written text produced by test takers of different ability levels with each other, exactly in the same way that I mentioned earlier. Now I want to unpack it further and give you more information. Basically, if you are doing an investigation of reading and listening assessments, I suggest that you can create a corpus of reading tests. Not just one test really, but a corpus of reading tests. So let's say corpus number 1, or listening test for that matter, it doesn't matter. And compare them with a corpus of natural texts, or naturally occurring academic texts, number 2. The question is how many papers or how many texts should be incorporated into these two corpora. Well, that's a $1 million question. I don't have an immediate answer for that. But if you are doing this as an assignment, I don't think that you should get carried away with this. So something between really 5 to 10 texts will be pretty good enough for me. But so let's say you have 10 passages in corpus 1 and 10 passages in corpus 2. You can create an Excel sheet and represent them in your Excel sheet in 2 columns. In column 1, you write the number of your corpora all the way down. So it will be corpus 1, 1, 1, and then 2, 2, 2. So for corpus 1, text 1 has a difficulty level or Flesch-Kincaid level of, let's say, 12 something. The other one is 11. The other one is 10. And here for corpus 2, you have different figures. For example, you got 11, you got 20, suddenly something very difficult, and so on and so forth. This allows you to, so let me just like Flesch-Kincaid. I hope you can read this. It's very difficult to write on the screen of computers when you're presenting something. So anyway, so then you can run a t-test if you like to compare the difficulty level of the 2 corpora that you have created. After you have run the t-test, if you're not familiar with the t-test, by the way, it's fine. You can just leave it as is. You can just compute an average, a mean score. Mean of group 1 and mean 1, mean 2. And you see that they are or they're not different. Anyway, whatever results you get after doing this, you should ask yourself, what are the implications of the observed differences, or similarities for that matter, for the domain specification, which is also known as content validity and situational authenticity, and you should explain this in your paper or your assignment. If you do not remember what the domain specification inference is, I suggest you go back to the videos that I created before and watch the videos that specifically talk about these inferences or validity types. Now, if you are analyzing writing and speaking tests, what you could do is to create two or several corpora of written or spoken text under test conditions, one per each level of proficiency. For example, you have 3 levels of proficiency, let's say level 1, 2, and 3, and you have 3 corpora here. So you have to transcribe the performances of test takers who received scores 1 and then 2 and then 3, and then compare them with each other in the same way that I mentioned before. But let's say you, if you want to do more, say, sophisticated analysis, something analogous to t-test, in this context, since we have 3 groups, you will need to do an ANOVA, but it's not, in my view, it's not compulsory if you're doing doing an assignment. Or you could just do away with the 3rd one and just compare these 2 corpora with each other doing a t-test. If you're not familiar with the t-test, it's still okay. Just calculate the mean for mean 1 for the first corpus, and then calculate the mean for the second corpus, and just compare them with each other to draw a conclusion. Once you're done this, you have done this. Again, ask yourself, what are the implications of the observed differences for the scoring or evaluation inference of the test? If you do not remember what the scoring inference or the evaluation inference is, I suggest that you watch the videos that I created before. I hope this helps you run a Flesch-Kincaid analysis and compare the different tests with each other. The final thing I want to say is that if you do not have access to those websites for one reason or another, I suggest that you actually go through your Microsoft Word, because Microsoft Word also allows you to compute Flesch-Kincaid, but it doesn't provide you with those nice visualizations that I presented before. So I'll leave this here. You can just stop the video and go through the steps. I don't want to take your time more than this. This brings me to the end of this video. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you find it useful. Have a good day.